Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, yadadai da-da-da-da-da-da-dai. Hine ma tov, yadadai da-da-da-da-da-da-dai. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, yadadai da-da-da-da-da-da-dai. Hine ma tov, yadadai da-da-da-da-da-da-dai. Shabbat shalom. Oh goodness, everything's okay. This Shabbat, the Shabbat that falls between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, is known as Shabbat Shuvah, or the Shabbat of Return. So I want to bless and thank all of you who have boldly returned to synagogue after so many services this week. We are a small but mighty crew, and we are happy to have anybody joining us online as well. So on this day, as we move from thinking about the renewal and rebirth of Rosh Hashanah into the potential uncomfortable conversations that come with the days of awe, conversations of forgiveness, conversations of atonement, and our ultimate fasting on Yom Kippur, we shift now into thinking about some more difficult themes. And our Torah portion this week takes us straight into the belly of the beast. Some really dark and interesting reflections of God's love and pain in creating the people Israel. So I'm glad to be holding us together as a community and bringing us into this period of rest before we take on the difficult themes of atonement. To light candles tonight, I invite up Anne and Cece. You can find the blessing for lighting candles on page 120 in our Siddur. If you need any help with the matches, just let me know. They frequently give people trouble. Would you like me to light it? Yeah. Ruch Adonai, Melech Haolam, Asher Kichanu b'mitzvotav, b'tzlivan, v'hadlikner, Amen. Thank you so much. We continue with our prayer on page 142 with Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malahei Hasharet, Malahei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malahei Chamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bohem l'shalom, malahei hashalom, malahei elyon. Mi melech, malahei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Baruch Chuni l'shalom, malahei hashalom, malahei yon. Mi melech, malahei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeitem l'shalom, malahei hashalom, malahei elyon. Mi melech, malahei hamelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We join our voices together to welcome in the Shabbos bride, the joy of Shabbat, God's essence on earth that we are able to tap into in a special way on this holy day. Join me now on page 138 for Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Nekabela. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Nekabela. Shamor vezachor bedibor echad, Hishmianu el Chamuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shemo tiferet veletila. Leha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Leha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nilcha, Ki hi mikor habracha, Merosh mekedem nesuka, Sof ma'aseh b'machshavati la. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 5. Hitoreri, Kiva orech kumi uri, Shir daberi, Kavod Adonai alek negila. Leha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 9, please rise. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, Gam besimcha uv'tzechola, Toch emunei yam segula. Boi kala, Leha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Leha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. You may be seated. Continue now with Chatzi Kaddish, page 144. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach yirutei ve'amlik malchutei, בחיי הון וביומי חון, ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה, ובזמן קריב נאמרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבא מבורך, לעולם עולמיה, יתברך, יתברך, וישתבח, ויתפאר, ויתרומם, ויתנשא, ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתהלל, שמי דקודשא בריחו, לעילם מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא, נאמרו, אמן. We move into the blessings around the Shema, the central creed of our faith, of God's oneness. We come together to call ourselves and each other to prayer. I will begin by reciting the first line of the Baruch Hu, and then I invite us all as a community to recite the second two lines of the Baruch Hu on page 146. Please rise. Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed. You may be seated. We read together from the top of page 149. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars, creator of the tide of time and light. You guide the current of day into night, as heaven spans to infinity. You set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. We sing together of God's love on page 150, Ahavat Olam. These words will guide us straight into the Shema on the next page. We sing together. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha achavta, Amcha achavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Hukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadita, Otanu limadita. Al kain Adonai Eloheinu b'shochmenu, Uvkumenu nasiach bechukecha, V'nismech b'divrei Toratecha, Uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki heim hayenu, ve'orech yameinu, uvahem nege yomam v'layla, uvhem nege yomam v'layla, ve'ahavata al tasir, mimenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Vaed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha V'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha ve'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha b'derech uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha ve'hayu letotafot beininecha uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru ve'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim le'Elohehem Ani Adonai Elohehem Asher hotzeiti ethem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohehem Adonai Elohehem Emet. Our next prayer we will sing together is Mi Hamocha on page 158. Mi Hamocha marks a glorious moment in the journey of our people, where we move from slavery to freedom. As one peoplehood together, we walk across the sea, something we thought impossible, and find ourselves together in joy on the other side. When I think about the week that lies ahead of us, the days of awe, and the difficult, sometimes impossible seeming things that we might need to do towards atonement, I draw a lot of inspiration from this story, and I hope that we find ourselves on the other side of break fast with timbrels in our hands. Mi Hamocha, page 158. Mi Hamocha Bailim Hadonai Mi Hamocha Nedar Bakodesh Nora Tehilot O Sefele Nora Tehilot O Sefele Yalai lai 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 Yalai lai 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 Yalai lai 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 Yalai lai 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 Yai lai 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 Malchutecha ra'uvanecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam ze Eli anu ve'amru ze Eli anu ve'amru Adonai yimloch le'olam vayed Adonai yimloch le'olam vayed Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. Vishamru, page 162. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam veritolam Lasot et ha-Shabbat B'nei uvein B'nei Yisrael Oti le'olam Veshamru V'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam veritolam Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai Asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et hashabat lasot et hashabat ledorotam berit olam uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash shavat vayinafash Shavat vayinafash v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et hashabat lasot et hashabat ledorotam verit olam. This brings us now to our standing prayer, the Amidah, the heart of our tefillah. You'll notice today on Shabbat Shuvah, we have a couple extra inserted lines here in the Amidah, specifically in Avot Ve'im. Actually, I think in all three prayers, in Avot Ve'imahot, Gevurot, and Kedusha. Yes, all three. So we'll recite them together as we move through the Amidah. Please rise in body or in spirit. Page 164. Ananananana Adonai. Ananananana Svatai Tiftach. Ananananana Ufi Agid. Ufi Agid Tehilatecha. Ananananana Adonai. Ananananana Svatai Tiftach. Ananananana Ufi Agid. Ufi Agid Tehilatecha. Adonai Sefatai Tiftach Ufi Agid Tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Bezocher Hasdei Avot V'Imahot, Mevigula Livnei V'Nehem, Leman Shemo Be'achava, Zochrenu Lechaim, Melech Hafetz B'Chaim, V'chotzvenu B'Sefer HaChaim, Lemancha Elohim Chaim. Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagin, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mehayeh hakol et harav lehoshia, Morid hatal, Mekalkel chaim bechesed, Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim ve'rofeh cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umidom melach, Melech memit umechayeh, Umatmiach Yeshua, Mihamocha av harachamim, Zocher yitzruav lechaim barachamim. V'ne'eman atah l'chayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shim hakadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yechalalu chasela. Baruch atah Adonai, hamelech hakadosh. We continue now with private prayer. You may use the words on your heart or the words on the page. When you are ready to continue with our service, please be seated. Oh, say shalom bimroma. Huya say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Bimru, bimru. Amen. Oh, say shalom bimroma. Huya say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Imru, imru. Amen. We turn our thoughts now to those in our community who might be facing precarious health, either in their bodies or their minds. If there is someone whose name you would like to bring into our Misha Beiroth prayer this evening, please, if you are online, you can enter their name in the comments, or if you are here in the room, please speak their names aloud to bring them into our presence. All right. As a community, we will be praying for Malka Cyril bat Devoradina, Sarah bat Avraham, Kathleen Ford, Maya Smith, Mac Russell, Eileen Abbey, Charles Apple, Charles Ronkin, Judith Schleschel, Zahava bat Dan, Gabriel Komisar, Eliyahu ben David ve'Elka, Stephen Wilner, Marty Gingle, Roz Bolsky, Graham Ross, Kathy Jarrett Tremper, Ariel Roberts, Shifra Basha, Esther Rachel Bat Danielle Ve'Avigail. A Misha Berach prayer can be found on page 371. The middle of the page. Misha Berach Avotenu Mikor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishe Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Some words of Torah, and some words of something else. Max, the king of all wild things, was lonely and wanted to be somewhere where someone loved him best of all. Then, from far away across the world, he smelled good things to eat, so he gave up being the king of where the wild things are. But the wild things cried, "Oh, please don't go. We'll eat you up. We love you so." And Max said, "No." The wild things roared their terrible roars and gnashed their terrible teeth and rolled their terrible eyes and showed their terrible claws, but Max stepped into his private boat and waved goodbye. That's the something else, if you can't tell. I'm guessing a number of you might recognize these words, or at least have a guess as to where they came from. Maurice Sendak's beloved 1963 children's book, Where the Wild Things Are, which has had such a lasting impact on our cultural imagination. It spawned film, television, opera, art, music, and shaped so many young minds for over half a century. And I couldn't stop thinking about it this week when I read our Torah portion. This part specifically, my favorite part of the book. It's a really dark moment if you let it sink in. Please don't go. We'll eat you up. We love you so. It's paradoxical on its face. If they want him to stay, if they want him to be king, they shouldn't wish him harm. And yet, facing the pain of losing him, knowing that he might continue living elsewhere, they would rather consume him than let him go. That is a terrifying kind of love. And a kind of love I think too many of us know a little bit too well. The desire for closeness that is so deep that you might destroy something just to keep a small part of them close to you. When I read this week's Torah portion, Hat Zinu, I could almost hear God saying these words. It's a dark piece of Torah, if you really let it sink in. At this, almost the very end of our Torah, Moses calls out upon the people to listen to him and speaks on behalf of God through poetry. Moses speaks of God's goodness and the people's lack of worthiness. Moses points out that God provided for the Israelites, protected the Israelites, let the Israelites grow big and strong, and in return, the Israelites have turned their back on God, have worshipped other gods. And God proposes God's own reaction, pained and harsh against the Israelites. God insists that they will sweep misfortunes upon the Israelites, wasting famine, ravaging plague, deadly pestilence, fanged beasts. God is so pained by the way the Israelites abandoned God and God's law. God is so pained by God's own beloved people, God's chosen people, that God would consider doing horrible things. I think about this kind of tortured and painful love a lot during the High Holy Days. Does anyone here, I know this is a very big sample size to test from, does anyone here come from a normal, not complicated family? I'm still looking for one, so please let me know if you do. Personally, my family has a lot of its own fractures, dark periods, dramatic histories, and I always felt self-conscious about that becoming a rabbi. I thought to stand up here on the bima, I would have to be this picture of a perfect Jewish family behind me, this picture of what it means to live a life without blemish, something to that extent. And then, during my rabbinic training, I had the gift of becoming a hospital chaplain over the summer, training with other potential future clergy people, future pastors, future chaplains, and we all had to make family genealogies. So we got sent home with these posters like we were little kids in the 4th grade. We made family trees and wrote about all of the internal relationships between ourselves and our parents and their parents, going all the way back to great-grandparents. I thought that my family tree was going to look like some kind of, soap opera amongst Leave It to Beaver family trees. And to my surprise, every single person training to be a chaplain had some real dark, twisted families behind them. So like I've said, I'm still looking for that normal family. Please let me know at the Oneg if you have one. I can't think of any meaningful conflict I've ever had with someone who didn't stir this kind of complicated mix of love and pain within me. The kind of hurt that takes real work to atone can only come from people who've been close enough to do us that kind of harm. Where the Wild Things Are itself is a story of family conflict, both literally and figuratively. In the literal context, our main character, Max, a little boy, is being mischievous, and his mom sends him to his room without supper. And in his room, Max imagines a land full of wild things that encourage and love his rambunctious spirit. He lives briefly in a world where his misbehavior makes him a beloved king, until he misses home, the love of his mother, and he goes back. Maurice Sendak wrote this book as an attempt to explore how children gain mastery over their anger. He wrote Max as a child who was in touch with his inner wildness and learns to maintain that connection in a measured way rather than losing himself in it entirely. But there's another complicated layer to this story. Sendak wrote his Wild Things inspired by the Yiddish phrase wilde Chaya. This literally translates to wild animals, but it is commonly used to describe boisterous, mischievous children. In the 1983 opera version of Where the Wild Things Are, Sendak named the creatures that populate the land of wild things, his wilde Chaya, if you will, and in doing so revealed their original inspiration. He had based his drawings on caricatures of his aunts and uncles that he had drawn as a child, naming them after his beloved deceased relatives, Zippy, Moisha, Aaron, Emil, and Bernard. Sendak was raised in Brooklyn by a family of poor Jewish immigrants from Poland. His aunts and uncles, who he turned into his wild things, he had observed as a child as being all crazy, these are his words, crazy faces and wild eyes, bloodshot eyes and big yellow teeth, who pinched his cheeks till they were red. His parents, aunts, and uncles were the only members of their larger family who had escaped the horrors of the Holocaust and the loss of their home and family cast a long shadow over Sendak's childhood, which he described as complicated. He drew these caricatures that eventually became his Wild Things. As a child, when he wanted to vent his own frustration with his family, he doodled as an escape alone in his room. And then, as an adult, he wrote a story of a boy who needed escape, and gave this boy a land full of his own childhood drawings, friendly and grotesque abstractions of his own family members. The people who loved him most, and the people who frustrated him most. The people who carried with them the complicated reminder of all the people and places they lost. When I look at Sendak's Wild Things, I can feel that love and that pain. Yes, they have horns, claws, and pointed teeth, but they are undeniably lovable. There's a sweetness behind those big yellow eyes that stare at the boy. And the defining moment for the Wild Things, which I think is so telling, is when they choose to make Max their king. They make Max their king because Max can look at them and their claws and their pointed teeth without blinking or looking away. He knows the very things that make them monstrous, and he's not repelled. What must it have felt like for the Wild Things to have been really seen like that? Please don't go. We'll eat you up. We love you so. This year I didn't feel angry or scared by God's wrath in Ha'atzinu. I felt sad. God sounded so lonely, so desperate for connection. Ultimately, God chooses not to smite the people, thankfully. Not for their sake, not because they deserved it, but because God didn't want other nations to think they had triumphed over Israel. But I think there's another reason. I think there's something to be said for the way that Israel knew God. They had not seen God's face, but they had glimpsed God, heard God, been in connection with God in a way that others had not. Much like the Wild Things, God must have felt something so profound in the act of being seen, if it pained God so much to consider what it would be like to lose that. I've spent a lot of time in the preparation for the high holidays and over these high holidays thinking about the complicated relationships in my life, the people who I might want to forgive or might want to seek forgiveness from. And I felt a lot of the mix of emotions that I see in the Wild Things. Love is not always easy. Love is not always kind. Sometimes love has sharp claws and gnashing teeth, paradoxically paired with soft, kind eyes. But I hope for all of us in this new year, we can be patient enough to look love in its face and find a way to sustain the kind of love that makes us feel truly seen. Shabbat Shalom. And now some words on behalf of the congregation. We've got a couple announcements. Tomorrow morning, Saturday, October 5th, 10 a.m., right here in this sanctuary, you can join us for the traditional egalitarian minyan. This service will also be available on YouTube. The link can be found in this week's newsletter or on the CBI YouTube channel. And then on Monday, October 7th at 7 p.m., we will be hosting an October 7th memorial gathering. You can join Rabbi Tom Goodhertz as the CBI community commemorates the October 7th attack on Israel, mourns for those who tragically lost their lives, and prays for the safe return of those held hostage by Hamas, reflecting on what has been a difficult and often painful year for the Jewish community. And then, of course, there's nothing else coming up next weekend. Yom Kippur services will continue this coming Friday and Saturday. You can find more details on our website. All are welcome to join. All right, as we conclude our prayers this evening, we turn now to the Aleinu, which can be found on page 587 of your prayer books. 586. Please rise. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, lateit gedula leotzer breshit, shelo esanu kagoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishpachot adama, shelo sam helkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kekol hamonam, vanachnu korim, Umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. You may be seated. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved, and if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands, by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. We turn our thoughts now to those who we have lost, either in recent months or weeks or in years past this season. As a community, we remember Jonathan Applebaum, Murray Bowles, Wayne Clayson Booth, Yosef Chaim, Helen Kaltman, Florence Kornblatt, Henry Levine, Connie Long, Bahia Mizrahi, Lila Politz Green, Sylvia Pomerantz, Ruchi Ramazani, Paula Stoller, Beverly Tesler Gary, and Seymour Weber. And we honor the Shloshim of Bess Kane. If there's anyone here in this room who is observing a period of mourning and would like to share the name of the person they are remembering this evening, please say their name aloud as my hand passes. All right. The Kaddish can be found on page 598. Please rise if it is your custom or if you are a mourner. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach hirotei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei kol beit Yisrael, v'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam omei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudesha brichu, la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'asei shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru Amen. You may be seated. May the memories of those we mourn be for a blessing. Thank you so much for joining us here this evening for Shabbat Shuvah. May this be a Shabbat of rest, a Shabbat of wholeness, a Shabbat that prepares us to do the difficult work of return and forgiveness during these days of awe. To brace us and fill us with that strength of Shabbat spirit, I would love to sing us out with Ozi Vizimrat Ya, which can be found on page 647, right at the bottom of the page. Ozi Vizimrat Ya Vayahi li Lishua 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 Ozi Vizimrat Ya Vayahi li Lishua. Shabbat Shalom.